Hello and welcome to Face Off here on France 24. 863 votes. This was the razor-thin margin between the Socialist winner and his National Front rival in a by-election that has transfixed France over the last few days. The Socialists can claim their first electoral victory since 2012, and the National Front is now clearly a central and a major player and not a fringe party anymore. In the meantime, the opposition Conservatives are showing serious signs of tensions when one of its leaders being booed in public by party militants. With me on the set, Philippe Turl from Radio France Internationale, Jean-Marc Gonin with the Figaro magazine. So last Sunday, in the eastern region of France called Doubs, there was a by-election, parliamentary by-election, and in the second round, the Socialist candidate was facing a National Front candidate, and he won, but just by a whisper.
A narrow win in a crucial litmus test ahead of 2017 presidential elections. Socialist Frédéric Barbier fended off his National Front opponent Sophie Montel at this by-election in Doubs, depriving the far-right party of a fourth legislative seat. The Socialist Party scraped through with just 51.4% of the votes, Barbier admitting it was not a glorious victory.
We won't be celebrating because this is not a victory that fills me with happiness. If we'd won by 60%, certainly I would have been satisfied. But once again, we can see how much the National Front Party is progressing.
The election exposed divisions within the centre-right UMP party as well. The party officially instructed its voters to abstain after their candidate was knocked out in the first round. But presidential hopeful Alain Juppé and other MPs suggested instead voting for the Socialist in a united campaign against the National Front. The National Front Party were nonetheless claiming their own victory.
We've advanced by 25 points compared with the second round of the 2012 legislative elections. The Socialist Party has only progressed by 1 point, so it's very promising for us.
The win comes as a relief for François Hollande, whose party has suffered a string of by-election losses. The vote was seen as a test of confidence for the president just a month after Paris's terror attacks. A poll by Le Parisien newspaper on Sunday showed that 2/3 of French people still think he's a bad president. It's a slight improvement, however, from the 77% 6 months ago.
Jean-Marc Gonin, a very interesting by-election, and who is the winner?
If you listen to Marine Le Pen, she thinks she is the winner. I mean, the Front National is the winner. She's probably
big score. I mean,
big score.
49%.
As you said, Mark, the Socialist Party won by a whisper, and that very constituency was considered a very stronghold of the left, of the Socialist, and the former MP of that constituency was Pierre Moscovici, who has become commissary in Brussels. And this means that the National Front can be a real runner-up, a real challenger, even in constituencies that were, in the past, solid, strong positions of established parties, and that's very new.
It's very new, but we could see it coming, probably, Philippe Turl. Nevertheless, the Socialists were able to rally just enough votes to win for the first time. Some have spoken about a kind of Paris terror attacks effect on this. Do you also see that, or do you see really the main lesson as the National Front marches on?
Well, there is good and bad in this election victory. As you said, this was a socialist victory, the first socialist by-election victory since François Hollande came to power in 2012, and up until the attacks in January, as the report says, he was very, very unpopular in France, even sinking down to a sort of 10% popularity rate.
And the Socialists were all but certain they would lose that very election.
And they were certain, as you said, to lose the election. So the effect of the Charlie Hebdo massacre, the gain in support for François Hollande, the gain in support for the Prime Minister and also the Defence Minister in France and the Interior Minister as well, has all helped contribute towards this very minimum victory for the Socialist Party. So on that count, I think this is good news to the Socialists. It's given something to rejoice in, even though it's a very small victory. But on the other side, I think you have to remember that those who followed French politics a little bit will know that the traditional right, the UMP party of Nicolas Sarkozy, was knocked out of this election in the first round, which was unexpected. And at the end of the day, they were saying either you vote for, some were saying that vote for the Socialist Party, others were saying don't vote for the Socialist Party in the second round. None of the right was saying vote for the National Front. But the public doesn't appear to have listened really to what the UMP was saying between the two rounds. And the victory is also for the National Front, which has seen its support overall increase in the second round, even though it didn't win the poll.
You might even wonder, because everybody's, like you, Philip, is saying the Charlie Hebdo effect helped the socialists. It probably did. But there's
not as much as I think people have been saying.
And there might be another question. It might also have helped the Front National, the National Front. I mean, terrorist attacks from French-born Muslims in the country, people like the Front National say, you see, we've been proven right. They have been attacking Islam and warning about Islam since years, and suddenly this happens. And don't forget, you had 4 million people on the streets to protest, but there was a silent France that has not gone on the street, and those people might have voted Front National this time.
And I think also you have to remember that when this took place, Marine Le Pen decided not to demonstrate, to protest in Paris, but went off to protest in the provinces of France. And many political observers were saying, oh, she's made a big mistake, this will affect support for the National Front. Hasn't affected at all. And we've seen from this election that the National Front is still there, it's still a strong presence in France, and growing more and more in popularity. And I think one of the reasons for this is that if you talk to people in France about why they would vote for the National Front, they say, well, we've had for years the traditional right and the left. We've had both in power for years and years. Now we want to try something different. They're not finding a solution to our everyday problems of unemployment, of lack of growth. And above all, I think there is this growing fear in France following these Charlie Hebdo attacks of Islam and immigration. And the National Front is the only party that they see is coming up with a concrete answer to this and saying that we will deal with this if we get into power. And that seduced people to say, well, maybe we should try the National Front. We've never tried them. Give them a chance, see what they can do.
This puts the opposition party, the Conservative, in a bind, and they've struggled in terms of strategy. Should they come closer to the National Front or closer to the center? And here's what one of their top leaders, Alain Juppé, had to say. He, at a party meeting last weekend, said that, yes, it was a good idea to reach out to the center, but this did not please the crowd of UMP, the name of the party, sympathizers. Let's take a listen to Alain Juppé and the reaction from part of the crowd.
2 days ago, I was in Haute-Garonne meeting with election candidates. And everywhere, they're talking about partnership with the UDI and maybe the democratic movement too, that will allow us to win back this department.
Alain Juppé booed for taking an example in a region of France where he said we need to reach out to the center. It seems to indicate that the party is probably moving towards the right.
It's, I mean, the party, the members, the membership, definitely. But look, when he's booed, Alain Juppé seems somehow to relish it because it's his strategy now. He is betting on the open primary that will take place and will put him in a struggle against Nicolas Sarkozy. He knows that Nicolas Sarkozy is far more popular than he is among members, party members. So he is taking the bet that his political line will be more popular among voters, among people who will go to the polling stations to vote for the next candidate of the Conservative Party will run for the election. And that's his bet. He thinks the center will support him. Maybe electors from Hollande will switch sides and will support him. That's his bet. He knows he's lost the party in any case, and Sarkozy will be king of the castle inside the party.
Right. Philip, while you react, this shows, and we're going to see a poll of support for Nicolas Sarkozy decreasing among the party faithful and Alain Juppé slowly rising. This shows that Nicolas Sarkozy's comeback at the helm of the party is clearly not the success he expected. He's being challenged by others, starting with Alain Juppé.
Well, first of all, Nicolas Sarkozy was president up until 2012. So he's been there and he's done that. And he's perceived by militants not only within the party, but more generally in France as a has-been, someone who's been president and someone who has proved what he can do, and there's nothing really new behind that. So he's suffering from this image of an old president trying to come back again.
Alain Juppé is not exactly
no, but
young.
at the same
he was
time,
Prime Minister 20 years
yes,
ago.
but at the same time, he wasn't president, and he's seen as being. France is a very nostalgic country, and he's a person who is associated with maybe the good old days of when things were slightly better, when people look over their shoulder and say 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe we had a better standard of living and less unemployment, and we all had a better time, and maybe Alain Juppé is associated with that. But also, back in 2007, when Nicolas Sarkozy was first elected, he was the only person who was deemed fit to pull France out of its problems. Now he's not the only person. There's also Alain Juppé, and there are other people within the party who would like to come forward and run as candidate in the primaries. So Sarkozy's up against other competition, and he's suffering from this image of being a president who's already been in office, and he's trying to come back again, and it's not working as best as it could. And there's one other thing which I think is very important concerning the National Front, is that if the UMP tries to move more towards the National Front, it's playing a very dangerous game, because the National Front's aim is to destroy the UMP and to take away all its voters. If it moves more towards the left or towards the centre, then it's giving more weapon to the National Front, which will say, well, the UMP party is like the Socialist Party, and they all do the same thing. They have the same policies. They have the same people, and the National Front uses this slogan, the UMPS, and it's giving more, I think, grounds to the National Front to win support from the right.
Okay, that's all we have time for. Clearly, there are now three main players in French politics: the Socialists, the Conservatives, who have been players for years, but now the National Front, which is challenging them very directly. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Face Off. See you next week.